3 point-blank bullets. Doctors didn't believe he would live to see morning. And at 16, he was called the next Magic Johnson. The guy all of Basketball America was talking about could barely read a simple text. An undercover police sting cut his career short before it even started. Then came a dispute over an amount not even worth a movie ticket, and 3 shots to the chest. Fragments of those bullets remained in his body forever, even when he finally stepped onto an NBA court. What could this player have become if not for that night in 1989? Watch until the end. The most unexpected part of this story is there. If, like me, you enjoy looking back at the great NBA legends of past decades, and you're interested in their true stories and little-known facts that are rarely talked about, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support truly helps the channel grow and makes it possible to bring you more videos like this. Thank you. Now, let's continue. Brooklyn, late 60s. A neighborhood where oversized kids grow up faster than they learn to read. Right here, on September 4th, 1967, a boy was born who was destined to become one of the most controversial figures in street basketball history. Lloyd Daniels. His family was poor, very poor. Life was chaotic. Relationships at home were far from warm, and there was almost no support. The child was left to his own devices much earlier than any child should be, and the streets, as often happens, claimed him first. Later, the family moved to Queens. There, on the cracked asphalt of playground courts, the story began that decades later would be called one of the most tragic in basketball. The boy wasn't even 13 yet, but grown men on the court would fall silent when he picked up the ball. Not out of politeness, because they saw something rarely seen. He moved differently. Slower than the game demanded, yet somehow a step ahead of everyone else. He read the floor the way even experienced professionals don't. Fakes, passes, feel for the moment, all of it came to him without a single coach, without leagues, without structure. Naturally. That's when he picked up the nickname he would carry into history. Sweet Pea, a soft, almost childlike name, and one that completely clashed with what lay ahead. Word of him spread through New York faster than street talent rumors usually travel. By 14, he was being discussed not just by playground coaches, but by scouts from serious high schools. By 16, college recruiters who typically came to watch players 2 years older. And then came the phrase that would become both the blessing and curse of his entire life: the next Magic Johnson. That phrase wasn't uttered by journalists chasing headlines. It came from coaches, scouts, people who had seen hundreds of talented teenagers and knew the weight of big words. But applied to Daniels, the word magic didn't sound like exaggeration. It sounded like a diagnosis of his future. By 16, he was already being listed among the best high school players in the country. First-team Parade All-American, a prestigious list that only a handful of players across America make. Specialists who had seen thousands of games admitted this guy had something inexplicable. Not just talent, but some mystical sense of the game, as one of New York's most respected scouts would later say. Gyms filled up as soon as word spread that Daniels was playing. Grown men who had followed basketball for years made special trips to watch a teenager. Talk of the future draft began years before he came of age. No one doubted it. This guy would become an NBA star. The question was only, what caliber of star? His fame grew rapidly. Too rapidly for a 16-year-old from a poor neighborhood who never had structure, discipline, or anyone who could hold him back from the temptations that come with recognition. And there, behind the facade of bold predictions and rapturous headlines, hid a detail that people preferred not to advertise. A detail that could destroy any sports career before it even began. The boy hailed as the future of one of basketball's greatest stars could barely read syllables. Literacy problems went back to early childhood. Chaotic family life, constant moves, complete lack of oversight over his studies, all of it left a mark that couldn't be hidden for long. Daniels could hold complex court combinations in his head for hours, read an opponent's defense 3 steps ahead, but a simple school text cost him enormous effort. The system turned a blind eye. The potential asset was too tempting, the temptation to steer the young talent toward big basketball at any cost too great. Formalities were handled, grades were fixed, documents were processed so as not to create unnecessary obstacles. Talent proved more important than a diploma. And then a figure appeared on the horizon who finally seemed capable of giving this uncut diamond the right polish. Jerry Tarkanian, the legendary coach of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, a man who had built one of the most formidable college teams in the country. He personally saw in Daniels a future leader for his program and invited the young man to UNLV. For Daniels, it looked like salvation, a chance to escape the neighborhood where half his acquaintances were either in jail, on drugs, or already in the ground. A chance to turn a street legend into the official status of one of the best college basketball players in the United States. Only one step remained before Lloyd Daniels' name would resonate on the national level. But he never took that step. February 1987. Only months remained before the start of his debut season with UNLV. And right at that moment, something happened that erased everything he had worked so hard for. Daniels was arrested while trying to buy cocaine. The seller turned out to be an undercover police officer. The trap worked flawlessly. The scandal broke instantly. The university, having not yet even sent its promising newcomer onto the court, hastily cut all ties. Daniels was dismissed from the program without a single official game played. The career that had been predicted as one of the brightest in college basketball history ended before it really began. The name that just yesterday had rung out in sports columns as the future of the NBA rapidly disappeared from the big picture. A period began that Daniels himself would later call his wandering years. Minor leagues, semi-pro teams, random contracts, from local tournaments to third-rate championships whose existence only die-hard fans on the fringes of the system knew about. The young man who had recently been compared to Magic Johnson played where almost no one remembered him. Meanwhile, what would ultimately define his entire future, far more than any basketball contract, began gaining momentum. Crack addiction. The streets he had once escaped thanks to his talent were pulling him back in, this time through drugs. By 1989, the situation reached a point from which there seemed to be no return. May 1989. Outside his home in Queens, a conflict erupted between Daniels and another man. The cause, according to police, was a drug-related dispute over a sum that by any measure was negligible, the equivalent of a few dollars. 3 shots, all to the chest. Daniels was taken to the hospital in critical condition. Doctors fought for his life, unsure whether he would survive the night. The bullets were lodged so deep in the tissue that some of the metal would remain in his body forever. A silent witness to that May night. He survived. Against all forecasts, against the statistics of such cases, against his own drug-ravaged body. But one thing is surviving physically. Quite another is returning to a place where, it seemed, there was no way back. The public that had followed his story had by then practically written off any basketball prospects for Daniels. Addict, criminal, a guy with bullet wounds in his chest. That's how most saw him, not as a future NBA star. 1988, even before the tragedy in Queens, dealt another painful blow. The NBA draft passed without a single mention of his name. The player who had been ranked alongside the greatest talents of his generation just a few years earlier went undrafted. An extremely rare case for a basketball player of such giftedness. A long road through secondary leagues began. The Continental Basketball Association, overseas championships, random clubs in various corners of the world. Daniels clung to any chance to prove, above all to himself, that the talent he possessed was no accident and hadn't disappeared without a trace along with that night in Queens. Years went into recovery, not just physical, but primarily personal. Fighting addiction, attempts to build some kind of discipline in a life that had gone without it for so long. And then, after years of wandering, something happened that few believed possible. The San Antonio Spurs decided to give a chance to a player with such a heavy past. November 6, 1992. Daniels stepped onto an NBA court, not as the 18-year-old prodigy predicted for him in the mid-'80s, but as a 25-year-old man with bullet fragments forever lodged in his chest and a body worn down by years of destructive addiction. For most experts, the very fact of that debut seemed almost miraculous. The man who had been resuscitated by doctors just a few years earlier was now walking onto the floor in the uniform of a professional club in the strongest league on the planet. Reality proved far more modest than the predictions voiced about him a decade earlier. Daniels' NBA professional career stretched over 5 seasons: San Antonio, then Philadelphia, the Los Angeles Lakers, Sacramento, New Jersey. He managed to wear the uniforms of several clubs, never staying long anywhere and never unlocking the potential that so many had so unconditionally believed in during his youth. Teammates and coaches later recalled him with mixed feelings. On one hand, admiration for his natural basketball instincts, which truly were rare even among top-level professionals. On the other, undisguised bitterness that this gift had never been fully realized, that a man capable of being a multiple All-Star had settled for the role of a solid rotation player. Outside the NBA, his career stretched for almost another decade and a half. Continental leagues, foreign championships, from Europe to island tournaments in the Caribbean. Daniels kept taking the floor until nearly 40, as if basketball remained the only constant in his chaotic fate. Today, Lloyd Daniels' story is seen as one of the most contradictory in American basketball history. On one hand, a supremely rare natural talent that specialists compared to one of the greatest players in league history. On the other, a chain of tragic decisions, addiction, crime, 3 bullets to the chest, and years erased from a sports biography that could have been textbook material as one of the most brilliant. The question that still lingers among those who followed his fate remains unanswered. What could Lloyd Daniels have become if one May night in 1989 had turned out differently? If you're interested in more stories like this, real tragedies and rises of NBA players from the 70s, 80s, and 90s, be sure to check out other videos on our channel. Links will appear on screen right now.